A through F.
A is Jill Miller, who is a teacher of the Wilson Language program. That's a reading program that we use throughout the schools. Her rate is $50 an hour, and that is the same cost as last year. And the contract has been reviewed by the solicitor. It's the same contract as previously. B,
Brook School for the Blind. This is for a special education aid for a student identified as 2020-08. The cost for this contract is $40,500 for the school year, and last year's cost was $39,600. The next contract is Keystone Freedom Academy. This is for special education services, and the cost for this services is $215 per day. And again, this contract is reviewed by the solicitor. D is Curriculum Designs Incorporated. This is professional service workshops for staff development. Cost is $14,700. We're using Title II funds, which is our federal dollars that are allotted for teacher training. So this is one of the programs for our teacher training this year. This is curriculum design under the Habits of Mind program. And then the second part is a contract with Benacalic. This is also a contract for the professional development for the year. We are also using Title II funds for this contract, which are our federal dollars for teacher professional development. The cost of this contract is $12,000. And this one also has to do with the Habits of Mind professional development.
Excuse me, Mr. Dover.
Yes,
If you
sir.
remember last night, those of you that were at curriculum, when Dr. Scheid spoke about the Curriculum Innovation and Design Council. So that's 45 members of the school community who are part of that design team, from administrators to teachers to counselors. And so these are two of the services we're bringing in for their professional development.
Okay.
And I believe they have, I forget if they have 4 or 5 dates for the year that are planned for that group to meet.
Thank you. In the last contract we have this month is Chamber Theater Productions for the Encore 2 performance in Allentown. This is for North Middle School students to go see the performance. Cost is $3,769.50, and this contract is being paid for by the students and parents from their student activity accounts. So, and that's it for contracts.
Can I just have a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
So you had just mentioned the meeting times for under this last contract with Benacalic. So the 3 on-site workshops, so there's 3 on-site and then the other 2 are, did you say there was 5 or 3?
I forget if there's 4 or 5.
Okay, so I'm looking, it looks like there's 3 on-site, so September, there's 1 date in September, 2 in October. Then you have a virtual session. Is that accessible by every party? I mean, like.
So there are, that means there are 4 dates.
Okay.
Because the 3 dates, she's actually going to be physically here.
Here.
The 4th date, this is the similar model they did last year. Last year, there were 2 days she was on campus and 2 days where she was virtually in.
Okay.
And so that's the 4th one that's there. And then the editing and feedback hours is actually, she is giving us feedback on our curriculum documents.
Great.
And so that, we send her that, and so then we have booked her a certain number of hours for her to review those, to give the team feedback on what they're working on.
Okay, great. I just wanted that clarified.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
thank you for checking.
Any other questions or comments about these? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to the budget calendar.
All right, so it's that time of the year again where we start to think about the budget again. And
Thanks.
putting
It's
it.
September.
What did we get, 2 weeks of break here?
We've had a week of school.
Yeah.
Here it is.
It's a never-ending cycle, but it's better to be way out ahead of this than behind it, for sure. So what we usually talk about in September is the Act 1 timeline, where a preliminary budget is required, versus the non-Act 1 timeline, where the district board would pass the opt-out resolution, which says that we will not raise taxes above the index. that second option is what we've done since I've been here, and I think probably sometime before that. The preliminary budget timeline this year, and really we would only need to do that if we wanted to have the opportunity to submit to PDE for exceptions to the Act 1 index and ask for a higher tax increase, if that was something that the board wanted to do. And normally boards will do that if they have some type of maybe a big building project going on and they need extra revenue, or if something happened economically in the district that they lost a certain amount of revenue or something and they needed to catch up. Or if they had large out-of-control special education costs, and that is a way to ask for an exception to help pay for those costs. Luckily, we have not been in that scenario in the recent past, and thank goodness for that. But so the Act 1 calendar this year is actually a little bit more progressive or faster this year because it is tied to the primary election in next spring, which, being in a presidential election year, the state primary date moves forward about three weeks. We would normally have to pass a preliminary budget sometime in the third week of February. So next winter, it's actually January 27th, which would put us in even a tighter crunch to try to develop a preliminary budget and bring it to the board and have some type of an idea of what we wanted to do in that next fiscal year. We would, under that scenario, have the principals and department heads have their budget in our accounting system by November 1st, which really is not that far away, and then we would walk through the steps, have a preliminary budget in January, and then have a budget in May. Passage in May for the proposed, and then the final budget in June. So that is the first option. The second option, as we talked about, is if the board decided to go with the opt-out resolution and limit the taxing, any potential tax increase to the Act 1 index. And we found out yesterday, it was posted by the state that the index for the base index for next year is 2.6%. which is a little higher than this year. We were operating on a 2.3, so next year we'll be operating under a 2.6% base index. What we will do under this scenario is November 8th is when we release the budget information to the principals and department heads. We ask them to have their preliminary budgets in the system by January 6th. And then we start the process of reviewing all that information and then having meetings with the principals and department leaders, with superintendent. And then we would start our budget meetings then in the new year. And we would have to, at no later than December 3rd is when the board would have to pass the opt-out resolution, unless the board wanted to have a special meeting, because the date is January 9th, but our last meeting before that is December 3rd. Then we would move forward with a May budget passage for the proposed, and then the final budget passage in June on June 15th. And that would pretty much follow the same calendar that we just went through.
So is there anyone who, is everyone comfortable then opting out and knowing that we're not going to raise taxes above the Act 1 index, or is there anyone who feels like we need to file, have the ability to file for exceptions to raise taxes above the Act 1 index? Is everybody good with we're not going to raise taxes above Act 1 index? Okay. So then we'll move forward with that?
Okay, great.
Okay.
So then I will bring the resolution to you to not go past the 2.6%.
All right.
And then the Act 1 index number 4, I already covered that. That's the 2.6%.
Screen's not working.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's her computer too.
We have equipment issues from time to time.
Maybe you're logged in as.
Ooh, are you driving on the next discussion too?
Are
No,
you done with this?
trying to.
This is all you want to do, you want to come in?
Is it
There we
not
go.
opening?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I think she was logged in generically as opposed to, I think. So we're trying.
Mhm.
Well, I was logged in last
There
night.
we go.
You can go to your,
There we go.
however you like to do it, to get to the presentation mode.
It doesn't open. No.
It's opening.
Okay.
Yours open? Okay.
Yep.
Mine's open.
All right, so next is
I have
the
mine.
property tax rebate program.
Okay. I have a slideshow up on the screen, and I believe you also have it in front of you so you can follow along whichever way you would like. So Dr. Bolin and I would like to just provide information about the property tax rebate program that is going on at the state level, and also show you some information that we learned about the program that's running at North Penn and at the Chamonix School District. Okay, the state program, of course, it's administered by the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. The funds for the program come from the Pennsylvania Lottery and slot machine gambling proceeds in order to make the payments back to the taxpayers at the state level. There's a household income limit of $35,000, so you have to be below that limit at the state level in order to apply, well, in order to receive a rebate from the program at the state level. To be eligible, you have to be 65 years or older, or you are a widow or a widower at least age 50, and your spouse who is deceased was 65 at the time of their death.
And is that basically to say if they were eligible for the program, you don't lose eligibility if they pass away?
Correct.
Is that basically what they're saying?
Grandfathers them in to the program, and
Pun
unless...
intended or none, no pun intended with grandfathered them in?
No pun intended.
Okay, just checking.
I'm just not that smart on my feet. It does, that does go away if you would say, if you remarried and you married someone under 65, then you lose that.
Got it.
And then you would have to wait and qualify again. Also, age 18 or more and permanently disabled allows you to enter the state program as well. So at in the state program, the rebates range from a high of $650 down to a low of $250. And those rebates are based on a sliding income scale. And it's based on the total income in the household. So everybody that lives in the household, you have to include their income. And it also includes half of a person's Social Security income. And then any other income, any other unearned or earned income that you might have. And individuals complete a PA Form 1000 and submit that to the state. And so for the year 2018, those applications go into the state, and they have to be in, I believe, by June 15th or June 30th of the fiscal year in order to get the rebate from the previous year's taxes. This is the sliding scale that we talked about. So if your income is $0 to $8,000, you could potentially receive the $650 rebate. $8,000 to $15,500, $15 to $18 is 3. And then the highest income level, $18,000 to $35,000, which is the limit, you could get $250. But you will not get a rebate that's higher than the actual amount of taxes that you paid, the actual amount of real estate taxes that you paid. So you can't make money.
Can I stop you there,
Mhm.
Mr.
Yeah.
Delbert? So you talked about the completing the PA Form 1000. Is that an annual application?
Yes.
Or is that a one-time? Okay.
Annual application, yep.
Okay.
All right, so when we looked at the North Penn School District's program, again, it's based on the existing state program, so it's a model of the state program with some changes. They began in North Penn in 18-19 school year, and what they did was they issued a 25% rebate, 25% of the state rebate to qualifying homeowners. So if you were in the $650 rebate category, they would give you 25% of that $650 and so forth. In 1920, they're increasing that 25% to 30% of the state rebate number, so they're increasing their program a little bit. They do have a documentation, an application that has to be submitted to the district, and that's due to the district by June 30th.
Again, an annual.
Again, an annual
Okay.
program. And the North Penn program has been approved by their school board each year. They've decided on an annual basis whether they want to continue the program. So. So at North Penn, their maximum rebate in 18-19 was $163, which is the 25%. And this year it goes to $195, which is 30%. They have about 450 applicants in 18-19 and issued $35,570 in rebates. And the 450 applicants are about 29-30% of what we saw when we looked at the state numbers for the North Penn School District. So about 29% of the people that applied at the state level applied at the district level. They are expecting, I talked to the business manager there, they're expecting a higher participation rate in 1920. The first couple of months, their numbers are trending higher than they saw in the first year. So this is what the North Penn numbers look like at the state level. The number of claims that fall into each category and the amount of the state rebates. So they have a total of about 1,500 people, almost 1,600 people in North Penn School District applied at the state level. And again, they got about 29% of that applied at the district level. And at the state level, they it's about $500,000 in rebates back to the taxpayers in North Penn. But that's at the state level. So our next key thing, school district that we took a look at was the Neshaminy program. Neshaminy is a long-running program, I think back to the 1970s, Dr. Bolton.
Been more than 40 years.
Neshaminy refunds based on 7 income categories, so they spread it out a little bit more than the state. They also require an application be submitted by June 15th, plus the backup documentation that proves what's on the application. In 2017, they had about 227 claims at the district level, which was about 20% of the eligible people when we looked at the state numbers. And in 2016, there were 236 claims. So their data is usually in that 220, 230, 240 range that we looked at for the last few years. So that's what they're seeing in Neshaminy. And these are the Neshaminy numbers at the state level. About 1,000 or 1,100 people applied. About 377 or 378,000 in state rebates at Neshaminy. And 2017 data is the last data, the most up-to-date data on the state website. So that's what we use. This is the Pennridge 2017 state data. The Pennridge had about 811 people apply at the state level, and the state did rebates in about $267,000. And you can see the number in each of the different categories of income.
We shared the North Penn and the Neshaminy state numbers just to give you a sense for magnitude. Right, basically, we are half the number of North Penn's claimants.
Right.
And Neshaminy's kind of in the middle. So
Right.
just to kind of give you a sense for the state claims as we think about what the impact might be in Pennridge. And
Right.
also looked at their claimant percentages to kind of estimate what that will be.
That
right?
makes sense relative to their population.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but it's certainly pretty close.
Sure, yep.
Okay. So we took a kind of modeled a scenario for Pennridge based on the information that we just shared with you. We have 811 total participants at the state level. If we estimate that 50% of those eligible at the state level would eventually apply here at Pennridge. We also show a rebate, estimated average state rebate of $450. And if we followed the North Penn model at the 25% state reimbursement, it would be about the average would be $113 per reimbursement. So the rebate estimates would be, so 406 applicants, assuming 50% of the 811 at the state level, 25% of the 450 would be $113 rebate. That would be at a cost of about $45,878 of estimated rebates. If we received all 811 people submitting, it would be about $91,600 in rebates based on the 25% model. And again, the rebate cannot be more than the actual taxes that are paid by the taxpayer. If you would go back into those state numbers and actually do the division, it doesn't always work out correctly, and it's because there are people that would have actually received less because they didn't actually pay that much in taxes.
Gotcha.
But they may have applied and got $50, not $250.
Okay.
So that's why you see some of those numbers don't actually divide out. So, and that's dollars and cents.
Questions or comments? So, this has obviously been a hot topic in all levels, especially when they have, the property tax elimination discussion even going on at the state level. And, we have a lot of residents who raise the concern that people who've lived here their entire lives are, have been priced out of their homes because of the tax increases. I think that we're in a good place right now where we have held taxes for 3 years. And
Just a little bit.
we're in a good position right now where we have not raised taxes for 3 years, and with a completely balanced budget this past year. And so this is a good opportunity to do something like this, because it's not something where we have to raise people's taxes to pay for this kind of a rebate for seniors. And so I think that makes it it makes it, obviously if you're raising their taxes and then you're giving them a rebate, it kind of voids out the rebate. So this would be a good opportunity time-wise to be able to do something like that. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Well, is the state lottery fund, I believe, is a specific pot of money every year, right? Which I think they certify and then give certain percentages of to various entities, including the homestead,
Yeah.
farmstead rebate that we receive, or at
Yeah.
least
It's
the
instructing.
members of the public who qualify for it
Right.
receive.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seems to me like this is a zero-sum game in a sense, right? That pot of money, and if a lot of school districts go to this program, as the Inquirer had an article just this week, I believe, concerning this program, or these programs, and talking about interest in various school districts in the Philadelphia area, suburban area particularly.
But it's not, I think I don't know if I understood what you were saying correct or not, but I think you said it's a zero-sum game for us, which it would not be,
No,
because the state's not giving us
At the
that.
state level, it's a zero-sum
Okay.
game.
Oh, right,
There's a
okay.
finite, whatever the money each year is that gambling
Yes, absolutely.
raises is what's available to all
For the
those
homestead
entities.
farmstead,
And as
yep.
we've seen, the Homestead Farmstead Act is not the same number year on year.
Correct.
Similar,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
has been over quite a number
Yes.
of years, but it's not the same. And I believe that depends on that amount of money that we
Absolutely.
receive, as well as if we get more people who apply, or fewer, but normally, I guess, more that apply to that program.
The school district's homestead, farmstead money to give back to the taxpayers only comes from the gambling
Right.
funds,
And
not
this
not
does too,
PA.
correct?
This comes as we understand from the PA lottery and the gambling. So there's two,
So now there are two unknowns.
yeah, at the
It's another factor.
right, at the state level, there's two revenue sources for this program, whereas for our program, Homestead Farmstead, it's just the gambling. And they do certify that each year, and it's actually, I think, on your budget calendar. There's a time of year that that's certified at the state level, and then they tell us how much that number will be, and we can put it into our budgets. So,
What I like about this is that the people who are presumably struggling most to pay their taxes are the ones who get this benefit. The homestead farmstead, anyone qualifies, no matter what their income or wealth is.
that is true.
So, yes, if you make $500,000, you get $200 back if you apply. If you make $5,000, you get $200 back, and it makes a big difference in those accounts, I'm sure.
You're correct.
So is everyone,
Sure.
sorry.
So did I understand right that only North Penn and Neshaminy are the local school districts that have their own programs in addition to the state program?
No, I learned this morning that Palisades has been doing this for a long
Okay.
time with a caveat that they model it off of this program, but they also attach it to volunteerism.
Ooh.
And there are, if you remember back in the spring, I think it was Mrs. Cullen who had gone to maybe PSBA and had seen, I don't think it was Palisades, but she had came back and talked
It was
about,
Downingtown.
was it Downingtown? Okay, she had talked about a model where there was volunteer rebates. Was it NSBA? And so, and she had talked about that. And so
Okay.
Palisades does a little bit of both, where Palisades still does it for seniors, but it's not simply based off of income.
Gotcha.
Income is the first hurdle, and then the next hurdle is there's a minimum number of hours that you or a family member have to give
Okay.
to be able to receive their rebate, so.
So the other thing, when you're comparing the two models between Neshaminy and North Penn, and obviously this scenario that we're looking at is based on what doing what North Penn did. It's more predictable financially, because if you look at the numbers that you can get from the state, Neshaminy's model, you would have no way of predicting how much money it would cost you to budget for until after at least your first year of doing it, because the data isn't specific enough for their category, for the kinds of categories that they have. Where with Neshaminy, you're taking a flat percentage, it's 25%. And so it's easy to then take the state number and take 25% of it, as opposed to, having the variability, and you don't know who fits into what category, so you can't quantify how much you have no idea how much it would be. And so from a budgeting standpoint and making sure that we can, reasonably assess how much it's going to cost, that makes more sense. And then obviously you start out with a baseline, and then you can reassess, and you can always expand and increase the program. But the first year, we have a pretty good idea based on using those state numbers, but you can never predict with 100% certainty what those numbers are going to be. And so after the year, you get a pretty good baseline, to be able to make additional decisions in the future. So, I'm sorry, Sherry.
I had a question for Mr. Dahlberg. You said that it's on our budget calendar.
It
May.
it might not be. I might have left. Okay, on the Act 1 timeline calendar, on the May 1st is when the notification regarding available slot money's coming.
Okay, all right, well,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to have an idea of when that
Yes.
information
Yep.
becomes available.
I think it's important with this type of program, if we implement it, to make it as simple as possible. I mean, these folks are seniors, and they're not our wealthiest seniors, so, it's hard to get things accomplished and I presume that's why the number of applicants in these other districts are low, right? 20 and 29%.
Right.
Because it's, I don't know how difficult it is. As I understand, the North Penn program is not terribly difficult. It follows the state model in terms of the application process. And that would seem to me to be the best method to try to keep it, it may not be simple because the state doesn't make things simple typically, but
Right.
at least it's the same or very similar which means that they don't have to learn yet another
Right.
process and pay attention to which process they're
Right.
working on, since it has to be done every year.
North Penn does it, we've looked at both of those programs pretty carefully. North Penn does a better job, at least my opinion, I don't know if it's Sean's opinion, of incorporating that Form 1000, which has to be done anyway.
Right.
And making it, like you said, trying to mirror it as much as possible.
That would seem to me to
Yep.
be
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
want
I would
to do,
agree.
not make a whole new.
No, no,
animal.
no.
Right.
Right.
No.
Right, and then it makes it more.
Still math involved, but at least it's math you've already done.
Absolutely. Fortunately, taxes work out to be math.
And I think that's why it's important to notify people, to let them know that this is going, that this will be available to them, because
Right.
otherwise, they would have no idea, they don't, get our inside PST emails and,
That would have to be communicated.
right, so that way they know, and I don't know how much the other districts, I don't know what method they communicated it, and I don't know if, our communication methods would make our numbers, our participation rate higher or not. I think, but if we make sure we notify people, at least then we're doing our due diligence to let them know that that resource is available to them, so.
Do we have any influence on what goes on the tax bills? Could this be put on a tax bill?
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
when
doesn't-
I see 3 sets of tax bills, one
Yeah.
in New York State and 2 here, and they're all very different.
Mhm.
The information isn't at all like.
That's true.
So I'm assuming there is flexibility there. I don't know that, that's an assumption. But I think that would be an ideal place to put it.
Or a flyer added to the
Or
envelope.
something,
Yeah,
if they're
yeah.
willing
Well,
to do that.
and that's something I often see, I mean, I make the taxes for the company I work for, and they will often, if there's any type of a rebate or some type of new program, they will just staple a little notice onto the tax bill, because generally those are by a third party, they generate a bill, kind
It's-
of like a paycheck.
It's still
It's
stuffed,
just
yeah.
generated, but. you can-
Automatically
yeah, they
stuffed,
just
but we
kind
can
of
do it.
little click.
I don't know about Staples, but
You could do
okay.
something like that.
Well, do
Well,
some
and I
digging.
think it'll be nice
Yeah.
for us to send out something so that they can
A letter.
predict what this is going to be too, so
Yeah.
that they know financially what they're, what they're going to have to commit
Right.
to.
So like a letter from the board?
So, I mean, this is the same kind of thing that we did for the property tax, or
The
the,
homes, or the,
Yeah.
the people who had
Preserved
preserved
agriculture.
properties and
Yeah.
sending a letter out, so we would
Yeah.
send a letter out to these people and let them know
Oh.
also that this
That's a
is
good idea.
available to them, so.
so would we start out at the 25% of the state rebate amount, or would we start out at whatever percentage we wanted?
These numbers were pulled just to give you a scenario.
So we would
Obviously,
have
the
to-
board would have to make that decision in terms of percentages. We tried to give you some numbers just so that you had a sense
Okay.
in based off of what North Penn had done.
So we
North
could-
Penn
It-
started
it-
conservatively on
It
purpose,
mirrors.
right, yeah,
Right.
to mirror their program in year one.
So I think it makes sense to do, I think that they had a good model, and I think it makes sense to start there, because, again, you're getting a baseline, and that gives you a better predictor for future years, and so you can always come back to it. I think it makes sense to, we can increase and expand this program all we want, but I think no one's ever gonna wanna pull it backwards, right? And so, I think we wanna be able to predict the numbers with reasonable certainty. And so I think what they did makes a lot of sense to start there and then reassess it and see if, based on the numbers that come back, how we can, expand and increase the program in the future.
I like this as a starting point because it models the other districts,
Yeah.
and this is out there. I like it as a starting point to take a look at, and, we can revisit the percentage as we go along.
Right.
Mr. Daubert,
Yes.
I believe you said that the state raised their eligibility number this year to $35,000. Am I correct in that, from 30?
That was the top.
It is $35,000.
I think it was 30. Do you know whether that's likely to continue to happen? That sounds like an inflationary adjustment, or maybe not.
Yeah, I don't-
Maybe they just felt a little well-heeled this year versus the previous years. But,
Right, right.
That will have an impact, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If they do manipulate that number in any
Mhm.
way.
And that's kind of why I like starting at the 25% level, Peter,
nice-
because it gives us, we know where the state is now. You're right. They could flip that
They may-
next year, right? To something that
My
is,
guess is they won't raise it if they feel poor.
or they want to use that money for something else.
Right.
So, is everyone comfortable moving this forward to the board meeting then, with that model?
Yeah.
I like
I think
it.
that's good.
I like it.
Okay,
I like the simple numbers.
all right, sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Elmer.
You're welcome.
The next
Two for
Finance
two tonight.
Committee meeting is scheduled for October 8th, and we are at public comment. Do you want to give me the sheet?
Yeah, before she starts. Now she wants a sheet.
I've got
I think you
one,
put
I've
it-
got it. I've got it. Never mind.
Oh, we had
All right.
that one?
Big,
Have a
right,
quick one to
right.
draw.
Look at that.
All right, the Pennridge School Board welcomes public comment. According to policy 903, we remind everyone of the following.
It doesn't always work.
Just speak in here.
I can talk loud enough.
No.
The Pennridge School Board welcomes public comment. According to policy 903, we remind everyone of the following. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the board. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and note their name and municipality. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer rather than to individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. A speaker may speak once during each comment period. Please note that these sessions are designated for comments to protect the confidentiality and privacy rights of all members of our community. The board encourages members of the public to direct any comments regarding particular individuals, such as students or district employees, privately to the superintendent or other appropriate administrators or board members, or to communicate with the board and superintendent privately by sending an email to psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. Questions raised and not addressed may be followed up.
Is there a handheld microphone?
There is.
That's the microphone that if you turn on, if you'd like to use one, that one will.
I don't, do you need me to use it? Can you hear me?
Just use your outside voice. We'll be
I'll
fine.
try to use mine. I actually don't have a great outside voice. Okay. Well, hi, my name is Lisa Wilson. I'm from Bedminster Township. Can you hear me? Okay, good, thank you. I wanted to first note that I see that there's an attachment that's listed in the outline that is not on the computer regarding the proposed tax rebate program. Would it be possible to get a copy of that before the end of the evening?
I'll answer at the end. but go
Okay,
ahead. Yeah.
okay. And then I just wanted to thank you for discussing this idea. I think it's really positive for the community, and I appreciate you all addressing it. And I just wanted to say that One Pennridge brought this idea up in the spring, and what's important to me is not so much who brings it up, but that the
Can I
community.
remind you that on school district property, you're not supposed to be discussing any kind of campaign topics or campaigns?
Okay.
This is a school district, so you're not allowed to cover.
Right, well,
this.
I'm not using this to promote my particular agenda. The point that I want to make is that at a League of Public Forum, the League of Women Voters Forum, this very idea was raised. And in the detail that was presented tonight, pretty much identical, I think. And I think it's wonderful that community members can contribute and the ideas would be considered and sometimes agreed upon by the school board. But I did want to point out that I personally, I think was called, I don't think it was personally, but I was part of a group that was called Dishonest for raising this up and that it would benefit the seniors. And I just want to say that before rejecting community ideas, please try to be a little bit more open from the beginning. I think it'd be more positive for the community. Thank you.
Mrs. Wilson, yes,
So can I answer the second question?
Oh, sure,
first?
sure.
So we can't respond to that because that is a campaign
Well,
topic
it was a
that you
public-
really can't be raising here.
This is this topic
And
right here.
so, you know, for me to answer that question, I would be violating the law to be able to respond to your comment because you're looking at, you want to engage in campaign topics and that's not appropriate for this venue. So that's not something that we can respond to in our professional roles here. So, I'm sorry, your comments are, Dr. Bolton, did you have something you wanted to add?
The question about the presentation.
Yes.
So the presentations are loaded into administrative content first, the board can follow along, so that there's a context given to presentations.
Okay.
This will be made public either tonight or tomorrow.
Okay,
So that we
okay.
put on, and that's what we do with presentations when they're done that way.
Okay,
So-
am I allowed to respond to Ms. Vance Clemens' comment?
No, you're not.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Just wait,
I too am very happy that you're moving forward with this. Great idea. The fact that Chamois did it for 40 years and Pennridge is just thinking about it now just goes to show you're listening. And it's a great thing for the community. Thank you.
Kevin Foster, Hilltown
I
Township.
turned it off.
No, it's okay.
You can just wait a minute.
So I also just wanted to double check because last time in one of these committee meetings, I believe it was facilities, back in maybe April, about then, there was a matrix that was discussed also on a PowerPoint, very similar to tonight, and that matrix was not provided to the community. And some folks had to put in an RTK to receive that information. And I know this board has talked a lot about transparency and posting documents available for public consumption on board docs. However, again, we see a proposal that ends up being proposed in a committee meeting. There's a PDF right here called Tax Rebate Presentation September 2019.pdf, but there's no file on board docs. Can you guys just post that file before the evening is up? That's all I ask. Thank you.
So Mr. Foster, let me clarify again, as I did with
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson. They'll be posted tomorrow or tonight, I don't know when it'll happen. They'll be posted tomorrow publicly. Post them administratively first so the context can be given to the presentation, as opposed to being taken out of context prior to the conversation happening. So, but tonight's presentation will be available tomorrow publicly.
Any other public comments? Seeing none? Okay, then we are adjourned.
Nice.